Welcome to our digital marketing talks, where experts in the field share their experiences with students at Tamwood. In this video, Alexandra Ruiz, the manager of digital platforms and social media for the BC Lions and CEO of her own entrepreneurial company, Calix Media, shares valuable tips about content creation, achieving success in the digital sphere, and overcoming challenges when changing careers.
Okay, so I think we're recording now. Again, my name is Alex Ruiz, and I'm a digital content strategist here in Vancouver. I'll tell you guys about it in a little bit, but I've introduced myself here. About me, I was born in Colombia. So I'm also an international student, but I came here very, very young. So hablo español for anybody over there who does speak Spanish as well. And I moved kind of throughout. When we were little, we moved into the United States and finally ended in Vancouver when I was about 10 years old. So my career path, I kind of started working, I went into psychology as a degree because I loved talking to people and I thought I wanted to be a sports psychologist. I was a swimmer and I swam all the way through university and I thought I'm going to be a sports psychologist. That's what I want to do. And then I took a psychology course and realized I didn't want to listen to people's problems all the time. So a friend of mine worked at TSN, and he said, you know, you should go into journalism because you can still talk to people, but you don't have to hear their problems all the time. I thought that might be interesting. So I took a journalism diploma at BCIT and loved it. Absolutely loved it. I thought I'm going to be the best journalist you can imagine, hard-hitting news. And that's kind of where I started, but I ended up going to radio, doing traffic and weather at like 4 o'clock in the morning. So it was News 11:30 here in Vancouver. And so I started there and moved to Calgary. And in Calgary, I kind of went the television route, did some journalism, and started working for a production company there. And they did a bunch of different types of TV shows, like movie shows. I would go to LA and New York and interview stars and stuff like that. I had 5 minutes to interview them, so that really helped me figure out my interviewing skills. But it was interesting. And then once I was there I think for about 7 years. I ended up doing a show. Does anybody watch hockey at all? Not really. A little bit. It was a Calgary Flames show, and I did a 30-minute show for Calgary Flames, and it was called Flames TV on Sportsnet West. And I loved it. It was really cool. It was something very different. It was also, I'm very old, so it was also the very beginning of social media. Like 2005 was when I was like, Facebook will never last. It's MySpace all the way. So that's how old I am. And Facebook was coming in, and Twitter, I think, had just started. And so that really changed the way that social media really, it changed the way sports journalism and journalism in general kind of worked, right? So I started working with doing that show, and then the Calgary Flames kind of saw that I was doing something really different. When I first started with the Calgary Flames, I was interviewing the players, but not about hockey and not about the stats and not about the game, not the usual questions. It was more behind the scenes stuff and getting to know the players, and people, like the fans, loved it, right? Because they've never seen anything like that. They'd kind of seen a lot of stuff with journalists talking about the game and like the same exact answers and questions. But once you have social media and you can use that to tell their stories and get to know them in a different way, it really changed it. So the Calgary Flames then came to me and said, hey, how about you join us and work for us and start doing it? So that's how I had that's my career path to getting to work in sports and with teams versus just like television or media. So as I mentioned, social media and sports. Social media really changed the way everyone kind of looked at content, right? It wasn't about the game stats. It was about getting to know the players and helping fans make a connection with players in a totally different way. Taking fans inside the locker room and kind of seeing them connecting with each other and doing that. And so all of a sudden you started getting, fans who loved a player, not because they were the best player on the team or not because of this, it's because they were really funny or, they had a great personality and stuff. So, and then once you start making that connection and fans really start making the connection with teams and with players, then they become loyal to that one player, right? They really want to see everything that they're going to do, and they cheer for them, and they do all that kind of stuff. So that was really important in a way of for the fans to really enjoy hockey in a different way, but also the loyalty leads to money, which is what the teams want to see, right? So you suddenly like meet a fan, or you get to know them and they're hilarious, and you get their autograph. Well, you're going to buy their jersey. You're going to come to more games. You're going to get your parents, if you're a kid, to take you to more games. So this is what the fans want to see, but it's also what the teams want to see. And so you have to look at it both ways, because it is a business, right? So this whole sports marketing thing kind of changed completely, because all of a sudden this was a powerful tool to sell tickets and to build that brand loyalty and to build it for years to come, because you get the little kids too who really love it. So it's kind of exciting, and it was very brand new at the time. All I can say is people didn't understand it, right? So they were kind of looking, the journalists would look at me and they're like, who is this girl talking to players about random stuff that isn't hockey, and it isn't hard-hitting hockey? But the fans loved it. So, and then they're like, why is she putting stuff on Twitter? And then they asked me, they're like, can you help us, start a Twitter account? Because they realize that it's really a powerful tool. Social media is a powerful tool for marketing and for media as well. So I do content creation with the BC Lions. I know that's a lot of stuff that you can't even read up there. Oh gosh, there's a lot of content, right? So this, for example, is like 1 week during the season of the kind of content that we create for a team. There's news, so anything like trades, injuries, press conferences, that has to go out right away. You've got features, you've kind of got the fun stuff and long form behind the scenes, written pieces about players, podcast, just kind of all access stuff that the fans really want to see. You've got events. So you've got in right now, I work for the BC Lions. I met people in Calgary who knew the people in BC Lions. When I moved back to Vancouver, they're like, you need to get her to start your digital department here as well. So that's how I got in with the BC Lions. Networking is very important. So CFL draft, free agency, training camp, these are some of the events that we kind of focus on in specific times. Marketing and sales, that's where everybody wants you to focus. Sell tickets, get people in the seats. But what I have found, and what a lot of people now have found, is that if you are working for a brand and you're working, or like a team, if all you're doing is saying, buy tickets, buy tickets, buy tickets, they're going to tune you out. They don't want to see that, right? So you have to be really careful. You want to give the fans, obviously, exactly what they want, which is really cool content and fun content and contests and giveaways, and then, sell them some stuff in between, and they're going to want to go, and it doesn't feel as much of like a sales message. And again, there's the fun content. So like question of the day, kid reporter stuff, what's in the box, dad jokes. So all the stuff that you may now see on TikTok, if anybody's on it, or on Reels, that's the kind of stuff that fans want to see with the players. So we do a lot of that. The game day, as I mentioned, is kind of the very long day there. And it has a ton of content that we create. We've got, when I first moved to BC and I started working with the BC Lions, it was me and one videographer, and that was it. That was like the digital team for the BC Lions, and good luck, right? And it wasn't easy, and it also wasn't easy to get the president and people who were older, who didn't understand social media, and the owner to understand that digital was really important, right? And digital could get you to places where you couldn't get with just a magazine or a newspaper ad, right? So now that I've been working there for over 10 years, we've got 3 videographers, 3 graphic designers, 2 writers, an in-house photographer. So our team is quite big, but it took a while to get there. And I'll talk about the monetization of digital just after this. But as you can see, there's a ton of different types of content that you can do with like a football team. So that's not the difficult part. With some businesses, that's the difficult part, figuring out what kind of content am I going to do for this type of business? But for a team, that's not the issue. Monetization of digital content. So one thing that is different with working with a football team or any team is that it opens up like a whole new revenue stream in the business. And at first, nobody understood that. They didn't get it. They're like, oh, you're just going to tweet about what we're doing and sell tickets, just sell tickets. That's all they cared about. But it ended up being that we became the influencers, right? Like, so a football team is actually the influencer themselves. So the players are influencers and the football team is an influencer. And so what happens is partners kind of show up and they say, hey, we want to be associated with you guys. And we want you guys to tweet about us because you have a lot of fans and we want you to put our stuff out there and we'll pay you to do it, right? So when I first started here, we had there was $0 coming in through digital because people didn't get it. They didn't know how to sell it. They didn't understand it. And then all of a sudden, all these businesses were like, hey, like, could we, this is one example. It was a fast food place. And they went up to my partner, I think he was the VP of partnerships at the time. And they're like, we really want people to download our app. And it was I'm making this up because I don't think it was, but like Wendy's or something. And we will pay you, $15,000 or $30,000 if you guys put it on all of your accounts to download our app. And he was like, yeah, okay, no problem, right? As part of a bigger thing. And I kind of was there and I was like, nope, we're not doing that, right? And he was like, what are you talking about? Why wouldn't we just take it? Because our fans, you always have to think of your target audience, right? Our fans don't want to be sold to. They don't want to be told, download an app and go buy this car and do that, right? We're not an advertising agency. We're just like that. So then we started kind of figuring out ways that we could change the content. We could include a fast food place, and then we would sell it to them, right? So I think we ended up doing we got the O-line football guys to do an hamburger eating contest or something like that, right? Like something silly, but that our fans really enjoyed watching and they loved it. And then those players would, on their own social media, tell people, hey, you could win hamburgers for a year if you download the app and sign up here or something like that. It was, there's ways around it where we're still kind of getting to that same what they want, and we're going to get that money for the monetization, but that works for our fans as well, right? The monetization of it was quite interesting because everyone always says, how do you prove that social media works? How do you prove that digital marketing works, right? And there's always ways of doing it. There's, all the analytics and the data. You can tell them everything you want, but sometimes it's hard to, when you create content, it's just people kind of taking it in and watching it. And then they maybe watch a little bit more and they watch it for the third time or fourth time. And then you find that loyalty with the brand afterwards, right? So they may not click a link that you send. So it's kind of tough sometimes to prove whether or not what you're doing as a content creator or what you're doing in the digital marketing aspect of it, if that is working, right? Obviously, there's a lot that you can do to show data and to show analytics to say, hey, look, people are watching and people are doing it. And that's kind of what usually companies or your bosses want to see. There was an interesting thing that happened with the BC Lions, and I'll share this example during COVID, right? So what happened is, we were doing all this digital stuff and we didn't have that many people, and it was a fight every time. I'm like, we should send somebody on the road with the team, and they're like, we can't afford it, and really it's just digital and nobody really cares, right? So we were it was always a big fight, and then suddenly COVID happened. And in the CFL, what happened is there was no season. So one whole season that there was no football, nothing, no games, no revenue, right? Which was hard. I mean, COVID was hard for everyone, but for a league that, is barely scraping by a lot of the time, it was very difficult to not have any revenue coming in. So we decided, let's still sell digital, right? And I got together with the leads of our partnership side, and I'm like, you know what, it doesn't mean that we can't, use our channels to still connect with fans. People are at home, they're sad, we can do something to entertain them. And we talked to a lot of our partners and we said, look, we're still doing this kind of stuff. We had our players in the United States doing Zoom video, or videoing themselves on their phone to then put on our channels, and people loved it. So we really went hard on digital. We started having meetings. I was involved in a lot of those meetings with clients, and it would be like the government of British Columbia, and they wanted to do PSAs on mental health or stuff like that, or a client who wanted to just do like a fun gamification side of it, right? Like that's the kind of newest part of content. So we would create games for them, and we would really work together to do stuff that our fans would like, so that they could get something out of it and they could maybe win a prize or something, but that would also work really well for our partners. At the end of that year, our team brought in over $1 million, right? So for a year where there was no revenue, no football, no tickets, to sell nothing, digital brought in over $1 million because of the partnerships that we made and the content we created. Suddenly the eyes opened, right? Suddenly the president and the owner are like, whoa, hold on a second. And then other teams didn't do that. Other teams just said, okay, this year's a write-off. We're not doing anything. There's no football, so that's that. But we did it, and it was, I think we were the highest team in all of the CFL, bringing in like $1 million on a COVID year when there's no football. So then I think then they started realizing, wow, like digital and marketing and like social media actually does work, and it brings in, and this is like very straight monetization. So this is people paying us to do things on social for them. That's not even thinking about the creating those relationships with players and creating those relationships with teams. So it's quite interesting, and so it really does work. So creating content for different types of industries or companies. Have you guys worked with any companies yet to do a little bit of digital or social media marketing? Yeah, it's weird, right? It's hard. It's sometimes like when I first started, I think I worked for a pharmacy place that like fixed cars on the road. So you kind of get all these weird things, and they wanted me to do all their social media and kind of help create content. So right now, for example, I'm working with, obviously BC Lions are kind of my biggest client, but I'm working, these are two of the other ones that I'm working for. VoltSafe, for example, is a tech startup, and it basically is changing the way you connect to electricity. So instead of holes and prongs, it's two like pieces of metal, and there's a magnet, and I put it in, and there's something technology that happens, and then the power flows. It's complicated, right? And it's the science behind it. It's like all these nerdy engineers who just get so excited about talking about it and want to, and when you talk to them, it's so they're like AC, DC, like hertz, and you're just like, what? Okay, so how do I turn that into content for social and digital and make it so people understand, right? iMaker XR is an AR, VR, 3D animation studio, but what they do is they work with mining companies, and they basically digital twin an entire mine in Chile or somewhere, and you can be here in Vancouver with a headset on and like flying through the mine. So they work with huge mining companies to create this, right? So they're very different, right? Like BC Lions is sports, I know that, but then these other two are completely different. But at the same time, it's all the same, right? So this is a little bit backwards, but I always start with who, right? So who is your target audience? So BC Lions, obviously, it's fans, some partners. VoltSafe, that changed. At first, they were trying to sell a product, so it was like the consumer, and that's completely changed now to going into a different direction, and we're trying to get investors, right? And get media, right? So your wording, your content is going to change depending on the who. iMaker XR, they're looking for other mining companies. They want to work with other, and possibly, educational facilities that want to use their VR headsets for education purposes. So I always think that's kind of the most important thing. Who is your target audience? Who are you trying to reach, right? Then I always say why. Okay, so VoltSafe, because we want money. We're looking for investors, right? BC Lions, they want to sell tickets. They want to sell merchandise. And iMaker XR, we want to expand possibly out of the mining industry, but we're also looking for new clients. So And then we go when. So that's kind of an interesting one. That one's more of a, if an event is happening, right? Like, for example, iMaker XR, I started working for them very recently in January, and they were going to go to Saudi Arabia for this big future minerals summit that it's called. And they had spent $30,000 to go there. And it was just 2 people, and they were going to go and they had nothing on digital. They had nothing on social. And so I kind of said, hey, like, pay me a flat fee and I'll help you guys during the summit, because you want content out during that time using the hashtags that people there are using, because they may not find you. There's millions of little booths everywhere, but if they're looking for it, they may be able to find you. So that's a when, right? So there's certain situations where you really want to like focus on the digital side of it. So what are you going to do? Like video, all the different types of things. Video, is it imagery? Is it an infographic if you want to teach people about something? And then where? For iMaker XR, a lot of it is on LinkedIn. And I wasn't really used to using LinkedIn because, football fans don't hang out on LinkedIn. They hang out on Instagram and they hang out on TikTok, and they want to know like the fun stuff, right? So, but it makes sense for iMaker XR to be on LinkedIn because that's who their mining companies are boring. They're on LinkedIn too, right? So you kind of want to communicate with them where they are. So always think of who your target audience, where they live, and what you want to do with it. And then, of course, the most important thing is the voice. And that the voice should be quite similar, I think, with for the brand in general, but the voice will change depending on if it's a LinkedIn post or if it's a TikTok post, right? So those are the things that I find. And once you get those things in your head, any job that is going to be offered to you, I think you can figure it out. Even if you don't know anything about the industry and you don't know anything about, and you haven't worked in it before, you can figure it out if you know what they're looking for. So career tips. I think this is, Carson, you told me this is what I should finish on. For me, I think the top thing is if you want to work for a company, or if you're going to get an interview with a company, research the company, right? Like just do a lot of research on that company, get to know it, and help tell their story. For example, this iMaker XR that I was talking about before, I did some research when I did a presentation for them, and I looked up every single mining conference. I knew they were only going to 2 this year. But I looked up every mining conference around the world, and I did like a kind of spreadsheet for them and presented it to them, looked up the hashtags that were being used, looked up all the companies that were going to be there that we knew, who to tag, right? And kind of said, look, even if you're not there, during that, a lot of people are going to be online talking about it. They're going to be discussing it. There's going to be conversations being had. Why you can be part of it. So you may not be there physically, but you can be there digitally. So that kind of thing, they didn't even know a lot about half of these conferences. So, they were kind of taken aback, and that's a good way of doing it. Like if you know more about their company on the digital realm than they know about their company, it's likely that you might get that job or that client. Be versatile. So I say that to everyone who kind of comes in and works for the BC Lions that we hire. Like I will edit video, and that's not what I started in journalism and did it, but I taught myself how to use Premiere Pro. I taught myself how to use Photoshop. YouTube is a great university for that stuff, right? Teach yourself all that stuff. Like now with CapCut and with all those tools that you have just on your phone, that you can create a really cool video and it almost does it for you. There's no excuse. And like being able to do all of that, I'll bring coffee if that's what I need. So being versatile and like being willing to do everything and step in when you are needed, then I think that's really, really important. Stay updated, obviously, stay informed with like whatever trends are coming out right now. There's great podcasts that you can listen to, but you can also just like scroll TikTok at night and tell your husband that you're doing research. Collaborate, right? So most teams have a lot of people who you're going to be working with. So be it, photographers or videographers, and everybody's on their own TikTok and on their own algorithm. So they're going to have ideas as well, right? So using those people and brainstorming ideas, and even if I think I have the most brilliant idea and I bring it to the table in my marketing meetings on Mondays, I'm like, okay, give me more ideas, because they may come up with something way better. So once you're in it, like don't feel like you don't have a team. Hopefully you do have a team. And then use data. Analytics are important. The data is important. I always say, take risks, like do things that might feel a little bit different. Hopefully it depends on the company. But if you're going to do something weird on TikTok, just see how it goes, because you never know. That might work better than anything else that you would have tried before. So the data and the analytics are going to tell you that. And then, of course, always be ready to shoot content. Two of our biggest videos that went viral last year, I had 3 videographers that was during a game, and they're with their really nice cameras and they're shooting everything, and I see something happening. I was like, oop. And I just go over there and I shoot it with my iPhone. That was like one of the most viral videos of the entire season. I know sports is quite different, but iPhones and stuff, just always be ready to keep your eye out for being like, okay, that's cool content. When iMaker went to Saudi Arabia, I'm like, send me a video of you landing in it. Send me a video of you driving through the streets, because that's cool, right? Like, you're in Saudi Arabia, you're exposing people to a totally different culture. So things like that, just keep your eyes and ears open all the time. And I think that's it. Did I talk too long? I feel like I rambled. Thank you.